welcome. Cosmetics released a new collection called the Masterpiece Collection. I believe it was released a couple of days ago. Anyway, it's new. So in this collection, they released 2 new Divine Skies eyeshadow palettes, 2 new Heaven's Glow blushes, 2 new shades of the lip cushion, the tinted lip balm, and is that it? I think that's everything. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw this collection, I was a little bored, but also kind of interested because M's Cosmetics usually comes out with really good quality eyeshadow and just really good quality makeup products in general. I've tried the lip cushion, eyeshadow, and blush from them before. I have a whole review already up on M Cosmetics. If you want to see the whole brand review all together, check on that. It should be somewhere. I'll put it somewhere. So I'm a fan of their blush. I'm a big fan of their lip luminizers. I also really like their Divine Skies eyeshadow. I think I like their eyeshadow the best out of their whole brand. So I decided I was going to pick up both of the eyeshadow palettes to review as well as one of the lip luminizers, and I decided to pass altogether on the blush. So the blushes go for $34 each. They look to be both light beige shades. One's a lighter beige, one's a little bit of a deeper beige, but both pretty similar in tone. And this is kind of the general theme for every piece in the collection. There's a lighter version and a little bit of a deeper, richer version. So in the eyeshadow, there's the Da Vinci, which is the darker, more rich brown one. And then there's the Rodin, which is the lighter, more neutral leaning one. And then again for the lip cushions, there's the Mona Lisa, which is the light beige, and the Van Gogh, which is the deeper, kind of more pinky rose shade. Altogether, this is a collection that is all neutral focused. I like neutrals, but I don't love neutrals. They're very boring and honestly kind of difficult to review. So I think I should start with the eyeshadows. That's kind of the main thing that I think M Cosmetics is really good at. So I decided to pick up both of them. They go for $40 each. Kind of expensive, I'm not gonna lie. You get 6 shades in each palette. Both of them again are neutral palettes. So they're pretty small, very travel friendly palettes. They each come with a little mirror inside at the top, which I really appreciate. And the eyeshadow is pretty good, guys. It's pretty good. So the packaging for the eyeshadow comes in these new, what I think is a kind of rebranded little emblem for them. It's the M Cosmetics little hexagon as well as the new EM. It's a nice clean white aesthetic, which I feel like she hasn't done this before. I think this is kind of like a new style for them. And then the back actually has little descriptions of what's in each eyeshadow. And you can also see the shade names are printed on the back as well, which is really helpful. The Rodin eyeshadow palette, on the back it describes it as kind of more of a shimmery peach, metallic bronze, and warm neutral brown shades, which I believe is pretty accurate. I don't necessarily agree with it being super warm. There's like one shade that's actually warm in the palette, and I think the rest are pretty cool tone. And on the back of the Da Vinci palette, this one describes the palette as being champagne, warm brown, and deep neutrals. This one, I think, overall, out of the two, the Da Vinci palette definitely has a lot more interesting textures. So the Da Vinci has 3 mattes, 2 shimmers, and 1 satin matte, which is really pretty. And the Rodin, it looks like it has 3 shimmers and 3 mattes. So there's one shade, the champagne shade, it kind of looks a little bit satiny, but on the eye, it definitely comes across much more like a shimmer, not necessarily like the satin brown that's in the other palette. So I think overall, I was mostly drawn towards the Da Vinci, but I wanted to pick up the Rodin to see how they compared to each other. So I'll go ahead and share some swatches of both of the palettes. I'm going to start first with the Rodin. So the first shade is Timeless, Clay, Sculpt, and then the next 3, the shimmers, are Whisper, Muse, and Masterpiece. Next, I swatched out the Da Vinci palette. Okay, so starting with the mattes, it's Ochre, Sienna, Fumatu. 3 shimmers and satin shades are Renaissance, Enigma, and Portrait. So M Cosmetics has never done a neutral collection quite like this, so they don't actually have any repeating shades in their collection. I did kind of want to see how they compare to the other palettes that I did have from them. So I have the Divine Skies in Magic Hour and also in Venetian Rose. There's a couple of shades in Magic Hour that I thought could be potentially similar. So the brown shade in particular, and then also potentially the shimmer, looked like they could match some of the shades in between the 2 palettes. I swatched those out next to them, and there really weren't a lot of comparable shades. The brown looks a lot different. So the brown looks a lot different in tone it seems like the Masterpiece collection has a lot more contoury and bronzy shades, and this one leans much more peach than the other two. So the Venetian Rose palette actually has one shade that looks incredibly similar to the Rodin palette. It's a pink matte shade in the top corner. It looks really, really similar to the clay shade in the Rodin palette. The one in the Rodin palette is actually a little bit more orange based, and the one in the Venetian Rose is more pink based when they're swatched side by side. Not super comparable, but I believe on the eye they'll look super similar, and you probably won't be able to tell the difference quite honestly. And also again, the brown shade in the Venetian Rose palette looks very similar to the brown in the Rodin palette. So overall, there's not really any dupes, any replicates, anything that looks super similar between the palettes. So obviously neutral shades are going to be found in pretty much every brand's collection. I think M Cosmetics is really special because their formula is actually so different from anything else I've tried before. The M Cosmetics formula is actually really unique, and they're not super comparable to a lot of other brands. I feel like they're much more blendable, much more user-friendly, and just overall really effortless. I was really excited when they did decide to come out with the neutral collection, even though it is still very boring. I guess I'll go ahead and get into the demos of each palette. Let's start first with the Rodin palette. So again, the mattes are really blendable. I think I tried every matte except for the deepest brown shade in the demo. I'm a really big fan of kind of like the peachy matte shade. I feel like I'm going to end up using that one a lot. The lighter matte is a really great contour, and I think you could use that in the crease really well and get a lot of dimensional looks with that. They describe this palette as like a soft sculpting palette, and I would definitely agree with that. You get a lot of dimension and can really shape out your eyes depending on what look you want to do. And I just think it's a beautiful palette altogether. It is still very boring. I really cannot stress how unaffected I am by this palette. There's definitely a time and a place for this palette, I would say. The shimmers I wasn't overly impressed with, especially the peachy shimmer. You can barely see it whenever you swatch it, and even on the eye it doesn't look very dimensional. So I was a little disappointed with that. And I'm also not a big fan of the shimmery brown in this palette. I put that all over the lid, and it's just way too warm for my taste. I don't like just super warm shimmers like that. I feel like it just kind of makes the eye look kind of oily and heavy. Finally, the highlight shade in the palette, I use this on the inner corner of the eye. I think that you can never go wrong with a highlight, but it's still nothing special. Overall, I was a big fan of the mattes in this palette and not so much the shimmers in the palette. So moving on to the Da Vinci, this one I was much more intrigued by. I like the dimension in this a lot more. I feel like you can get a bigger range of things. Like I said, M Cosmetics is a brand. Their formula is something that you can really share out. So lots of these shades that look deeper, you can actually get a really light look, or you can get a really deep look. I just feel like you kind of get more for your money with this palette. I believe I started with ochre in the crease, and then just for funsies, I layered sienna all over the lid. And then for more funsies, I added portrait to, I think, my whole eye. I really like the shade Portrait. That is the only satin in the collection, I believe. And it's just so pretty. I feel like I truly don't have a shade quite like this one. I think it makes the eye look really effortless. I feel like it kind of looks similar to the shimmer shade Masterpiece in the Rodin palette, except it's a little different in tone. I think the tone in the Da Vinci palette is much better and doesn't look as heavy and oily as the Masterpiece color in the Rodin palette. So like I said, I pretty much layered everything on just because I wanted to play and see how it looked. Yesterday was my first time trying it, and I just really went for it yesterday. I think Sumatu is a really, is that how you say it? I don't even know. I'm just gonna say it fast and quick because I don't know how to pronounce it. So I think Fumatu is a really great shade for depth. Obviously, I used it as an eyeliner today. This is actually the palette I'm wearing on my eyes on both eyelids today. So I use that as an eyeliner. It looks great. It's nice and deep and rich, and it's not too patchy. Some darker shades have a really bad problem of getting too patchy too quickly, and this is just a really great formula, really well done. So I also used Renaissance all over my eyelid today. You can see it a lot better today than you could in the demo yesterday because it was truly just a muddy mess yesterday. It ended up looking really nice, and I got a really smoky eye from it. But anyway, so I used Renaissance all over the eye today, and I think it's a lot prettier on the eye than it is in the swatch. And the swatch, it kind of shows up as like, you know, just a shimmer, but I think it's really special whenever it's blended out all over the eyelid. So that one's great. We love her. Enigma is the only one that I can see myself not really using that much. I think it's interesting, and it definitely has its time and place, but I just don't wear shades like that very often. So out of this whole palette, I think I'm most impressed with the mattes and the satin, and then I also really like the shimmer. So this one for me is giving me like 5 for 6, which is pretty good, and the other one is kind of just giving me 3 for 6, which isn't so great. So if I were to redo this whole collection, I would definitely want, like, if I took all the mattes out of both the palettes and put them in one little Divine Skies, I think that would make me so happy. I think ideally that's what I would want. I like the shimmer, I like the colors, I like the mattes the most. Do you need both of them? Absolutely not. I think you should probably pick whichever one you think are shades that you're more drawn to and then go for that. But if you're looking for a good neutral palette, these are definitely good quality. So big fan of the eyeshadow, knew I would be. I would highly recommend the Da Vinci if you have similar tastes to me. And I also just generally, I think it has better range than the other one. Okay, so moving on to the lip cushion. So this is the last thing in the collection that I picked up. I picked up the shade Mona Lisa, which is described as a light beige shade. I'm wearing it on my lips right now with nothing underneath. I think this would be a great shade just by itself, or it could be sheared out a little more, or you could put different color lip liners around it and really change the tone of it. I think it really conforms a lot to whatever is underneath it or whatever is next to it. So I could really see myself using like a pink liner and getting a slightly pinker tone, or using a brown lip liner and getting more of like a 90s brown lip. Both ways I feel like it's just kind of universal. It can kind of go with whatever. You could also use a lipstick underneath and really change the tone of it quite a bit. It's really clear and starts out really faint, but you can kind of build it up to kind of a more of a taupey, chocolatey shade. I'm actually a big fan of this shade in particular. I think it looks really similar to the Merit Beauty lip oil in the shade Taupe, which is I'm also a big fan of. This one has a doe foot applicator, and the M Cosmetic one is a little clicky pen that you twist up. Some people are not a big fan of this packaging because it gets really messy on the outside. I like it, I think it's cute, and I think this is really easy to travel with especially. So the tinted lip cushions were $23. I'm actually really interested in trying the other shade. I believe it was called Van Gogh. It's kind of the same thing, but a little peachier. And again, it fits in perfectly with like kind of the neutral vibe of this whole collection. So really happy with that. I feel like there's not much to say about it. If you tried their lip cushions before, it's basically just the same, but a nice, cute, neutral shade that I think could go with a lot of things. I think this one is probably one of the more versatile shades in the whole lip luminizer collection. Yeah, really happy with her. So final thoughts, I definitely would recommend the Da Vinci in the palette. Both of them are going to be really great quality eyeshadows, so you really can't go wrong either way, but I definitely don't think you need both of them. They kind of get at the same thing and look really similar on the eye. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. So like the video if you like the video, subscribe for more videos like this one, and comment down below what palette you'd like me to review next. I feel like 2022 is going to be a year full of new palettes. Alright, so I'll see you sometime next week. Bye! So how did I do this? I think I went this way. I need some water because I've been talking way too much. I'm at 18 minutes. I feel like I've just been talking for 5 hours.